Kevin Williams. I'm a senior research fellow at Talesis here. Let me extend a warm welcome to you, Chloe, to our seminar series. And we wish you all the best in this presentation. So for the audience, Chloe is going to speak on digital youth work, bridging practice, and academia. So Chloe, you're going to speak for about 30 to 45 minutes. And at the end, we're going to take question and answer.
Okay, cool. So, I've got about 25 minutes, I think.
Okay.
In my presentation, and that's about as much as I've got. So we'll go with that.
So we have more time for question and answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can take it away now, Chloe.
Okay. Cool.
Go ahead and show your screen.
Thank you. So just before I start, I'm Chloe from Birmingham City Uni here in the UK. I am part of the fairly new Youth Work and Communities team. We sit within the Social Sciences School here in Birmingham, which is typically different to most other youth work courses. They often sit with health. And a year ago, I came into this role from being a youth work practitioner. So my presentation today is really some kind of lessons and things that I've learned over the last year from bringing digital practice from practice into an academic space and the comparisons I've been able to make. So I'll share my screen now. Kevin, will you help me? If I drop out at any time, I might switch my video off just to help with the bandwidth, but I should be okay. So okay. Just flag me if I need to do that.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, great. So hopefully, I'm hoping you can see that.
Yeah, I can see.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. So as Kevin introduced me, the presentation today is on digital youth work and bridging practice and academia together as part of the SALIS seminar series. So first up, I would just like to cover this word digital, because a lot of my practice, particularly in the last 2 years, this word cropped up a lot. Due to the main reason being COVID, digitally transforming all our services. But people spoke about this word almost as if it was a new thing. So just as I'm going through this, maybe anyone that's listening in, spend some time just reflecting on what that word actually means to you. And it might be nice to reflect together at the end to see if those your definition of digital is similar to mine. So digital is not necessarily a thing, it is a way of doing things. Domer and Endelman in 2015 described it in this way: to move away from digital being about a physical product and more of the delivery of digital being able to host a space to create more value, but also have a look at your individual capability and how that adds value to your work. Digital, when we talk about digital, we have to talk about digital delivery, because we too often fall into a trap where we talk about digital as a single device, whereas most of the time when we're doing digital, we're actually just delivering through a digital means. So this is where we do see specific electronic items being included, but our work is around that delivery. Digital can include a number of platforms. So today we're using Zoom as a platform. In my other work, I often use Microsoft Teams. I've got WhatsApp, and these are different platforms, and of course on different devices. So today I'm joining via a laptop. Most of us have phones, but we see other devices such as virtual reality headsets being included into practice as a way of that delivery. It's not always a specialist skill set, digital, and I think particularly in the last 18 months, I did come across quite a lot of practitioners saying these words to me: oh, computers, they're not my thing, they're your thing because you're the younger generation. And it always made me laugh, because people saw digital in practice quite often as a really specific and really intense set of skills to be used. So it's not necessarily always around a very specialist skill set. like I said earlier, most of us have a mobile phone. Most of us can make calls on that mobile phone. Sometimes that's where digital starts for us, and that's absolutely okay. There is, of course, space, a specific space for that specialist skill set, and that's where we see the behind the scenes work when it comes to digital. And another word or terminology that you may have come across when thinking about digital and work with young people is this term smart youth work. And this comes around really when highlighting not only innovative, but I suppose collaborative and time-saving ways to deliver work with young people. So some reading I did recently, this term is being used, smart youth work is being used increasingly over digital youth work. So we're just going to share briefly like this expansion of digital, and going back to the first point I made here around people thinking digital is new, especially when we talk digital youth work, and it's really not new. It's been around for quite a long time. This is something I share with my students as well. You know, we're talking the 1800s when we see the first working phone, not necessarily the mobile phone, just the first working phone. That's when digital really started. Obviously, as we develop over the years, we do see the computer storage devices appear. So that was before the actual digital computer, which we're using today. So for those of you that may or may not know, computers were used as almost like an information storage unit, as opposed to how we use them today. But then again, we've developed computers into devices that we use for our work and our communication. 1984 was when we saw introductions of the mobile phone. So, you know, the first working phone moved on just over 100 years after, and we've got mobile phones and that move around technology. And just in today's world, so 2021, more so smartwatches and smart devices taking over, but we see platforms such as social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, really leading the way when it comes to digital, but also platforms like this, Zoom, really showcasing us capabilities of how we can connect to others as well. So digital, I would say, is becoming more accepted maybe than it was back when the first electronic storage computer was invented, and people were quite scared of digital. I do think people are still quite nervous and anxious around using digital, but I definitely believe that it is now more accepted in our work, particularly with young people. Something to think about here, young people are born into a digital society. So any young people that have been born in the last 5 years, they're in a highly digitized world, a highly digitized society. So when we're talking about working with young people, it's something we really have to think about, and something that we can't really keep running away from because we're anxious about it. It's something we need to embrace. Our use of digital is constantly expanding, and I've just put there, for example, communication, because this is just one area. When we talk about digital, it's a huge area, and our use of communication. So we can text people, we can video call people, we can instant message people. It's constantly expanding. Can get messages on our watches and other devices. We can connect with individuals and groups we may not have had access to before. And I suppose social media had a kind of a head start on this, where we were able to connect with friends and families from across the globe. But what we really saw in a pandemic when we were working with young people is this connection to young people that only had a certain amount of buses or trains, couldn't always get to a physical club before. They were regular attendees of online youth work or the digital youth work that was taking place. We now live and work in space where we have created opportunity to build on these three things: digital citizenship, our digital etiquette, and our digital reputation. And I think, just linking back to my point earlier about young people being born into this digital society, it's really important to consider those three things, because it is our role as leaders or as workers or as that trusted adult to really be with young people on that journey. And we lead young people to be citizens in a physical sense, and have positive values and strive for really positive goals in life. But do we do that with our digital work too? And of course, the big one, COVID-19, obviously, digital has been around for a while, but the last 2 to 3 years, we really saw a digital transformation across mass service that was delivered with young people, or just a mass reflection on, hang on, we have never experienced this before. How do we now deliver our work with young people? So just on the side there, I've got, when we talk about digital, we have to think about how it's expanded in society, how it's changed and expanded within ourselves. We've built on our own competencies, and how it's expanded and changed when we're thinking about connection and talking and connecting with individuals, groups and communities. So just going back to young people now, why do young people use digital? And I suppose for me, there are a few areas that I feel really come out when not only do you work with young people with digital, but you read and you research on this too. So typically when we look at young people in their adolescent stage, one space we really do need to explore is how they are crafting and creating their identities. This is exactly the same in a digital space. We see young people from 7, 8 years ago using older platforms such as MySpace, really testing a digital space to try out personas, try out personalities, try out who they think they want to be in the world before then bringing that bit back to a physical sense. I would say today in 2022, we see young people bringing their full self to digital spaces, and it's now part and ingrained of how they're building on that identity. So less of testing who they want to be, more of showing up as who they are and seeing how that fits and how they feel within that. Anonymous, or a place to be seen. So this is interesting. Some young people use digital as a place to hide. So if we think about young people that game quite a lot, that's digital. We see over here in the UK, we do have some gaming youth groups that are quite specific for those young people. They like to be within the community, but not necessarily all on video chat and talking away. It's a different space for them. But for other young people, it's really a space where they can share a skill, show off a good time with their friends. So there's two sides of the coin. Some people like it because it gives them the space to be away. Some people like it because it gives them the space to be seen and sometimes heard. I was last week at the university. We ran a summer school alongside our Black Studies course, and I was speaking to some of the young people that on the last day they had to deliver a presentation around how they'd experienced university life. And one of the teachers that had come on the trip asked all young people to put their mobile phones away, and we tested and challenged this a little bit, saying actually the young people were allowed to have their mobile phones on that day. And one young person spoke to me just around how young people often get branded as being ignorant or rude for being on their mobile phones, when actually quite a lot of them are using it to research. She explained it in this way. She said, we can literally find out most things we need to know in 10 to 30 seconds because we can just Google it. And whilst we know not all information on Google and the internet is 100% true, I thought it was a nice way to reframe how young people are constantly looking down at their devices and think about actually how do we speak to young people? What words are we using that they potentially don't know what they mean, and they're jumping on their phones to have a quick Google and a search. Young people obviously are, they have physical friendships and relationships, but they use digital as a way to expand and explore those further. I had done some research in our last semester with our students around connection and young people and loneliness. And some things that were coming up was that young people are now living and using digital, maybe more specifically mobile phones, in a way that we probably would never think would be normal or in our way of living. So again, similar to what the young person said to me last week, a lot of people think we're just sitting there with our headphones in and being rude, but actually we've got our friend speaking to us in our earphones who's down the road and missed the bus, and we're talking to them. So it's just interesting, our perceptions versus their reality, and how they're crafting and building their friendships and relationships through that digital means. And of course, culture, socialisation and trends. Digital very much part of a youth culture now, and very much growing within that. It's part of how they're socialised and part of their socialisation. So they're growing up around technology, specific devices, but around constant use and access to things. Even when we see things like train tickets or bus tickets, a lot of these are now being asked to be digitized as opposed to any physical thing. So it's part of who they are. It's part of everything about their lives right now. Digital and safety. So I just wanted to put this up as some like two sides of the coin. So a really big aspect we have to consider when working with young people and digital is safety. When we do physical work with young people, we often risk assess, and we often deliver that in ways which we know and feel quite confident that we're safe and they're safe. When it comes to a digital delivery, there seems to be many more questions. So a few things that kind of have come up for me is this consumption versus connection. We do want young people to, and we want ourselves to really feel confident using digital in work and using it to help us to understand who they are. But when is too much? When is the use too much? We want young people to connect, but we don't want them to overconsume. Extracting value versus understanding behaviour. So something that this is maybe more specific to social media companies now, is that we can see how young people interact online, and it's great for understanding the ways in which young people engage with each other and connect, and how we might be able to use digital in our work with them. However, there is a balance here, and when does it go over the top and we're being nosy, and social media companies or big media giants actually have too much control over that? So there's a question there. Threat to democracy versus freedom of speech. On my previous slide, I spoke about young people having a space really to be seen and heard sometimes, and that's what they want, and that's great. But there is this other thing and another side of the coin where a lot of other professionals feel that actually, because of the amount of freedom, we're not getting very clear messages through to people when there needs to be for them to actually have a real say about really important matters. That's a big question mark around that one. And then we've got this thing, affordability versus greener youth work. So when we went into the pandemic, we did see a massive digital divide between those who could afford and had access to it versus those who could not and did not have access to devices. So there's a question and a conversation there around, if we're using digital, how are we still making it accessible? But this side of greener youth work, a lot of research now is using digital youth work to discuss sustainable youth work. So when it comes to being funded in our work, it's something that is a thumbs up, because it comes under this term, greener youth work. We can keep it on the sustainability belt. So there's a few things there around kind of the safety and our approach to using digital. I just wanted to share this. I won't go through it in great detail because there is a whole policy document. I'm not sure you can see that. It is the European Commission Developing Digital Youth Work Policy Recommendations. So on the left-hand side of the screen, there is this infographic, if you like, which just explores how digital youth work shouldn't be a replica for physical youth work or the youth work in which we deliver. It should use what we already do, use the values in which we deliver that work, but also include digital as a way to craft organisational support, craft our digital skill and build our digital skill set, but also go into that work with young people with this agile mindset, be a little bit more flexible. We can come away from the script and be creative with our work here. So some of the things which they discuss within the policy recommendations is digital youth work is proactive using or addressing digital media in our work. So it shouldn't be something that hinders what we do. We don't have to use digital for digital's sake. It should add value. It can be used as a tool or an activity or some content. Some great work I saw being delivered was with when we speak to people around what we mean by anxiety. That's when we can start to bring in some digital content and explore this with them. It can be included in any youth work session, doesn't have to be online. So if you think about our phones, we can do quizzes. The summer school on Friday, I thought this was a great example. A young person doing their presentation wanted to do it with the lights dimmed and us all using the flash light on our phone to kind of create a wave of light for them. And I thought that was really, really nice. Digital youth work underpinned by the same ethics, values and principles as normal youth work. So however you deliver, we should think about how we're doing the same practice, just through a digital mean. Good practice is not assuming young people know everything about digital technologies. This term digital natives is an interesting one, and one I think we fall into a trap of using too much. They might know how to use a specific part of a specific platform or product. They don't know everything, and we're on that journey with them. And many youth workers avoid using digital in their work as means of avoidance from lack of confidence. Young people's time is only increasing, so we just have to think about how we challenge and reflect on our own practice and that use within that. So digital in teaching and learning. So me coming across to academia, away from practice, I have been really reflecting over the last year of how I've still seen digital come into work. A lot of it is to do with research. So the European Youth Work Agenda is doing quite a lot around the youth work value, and this term digital youth work, they are crafting this space called the bond process, which is just where those digital practices can be shared on a European scale. I think it's a really nice example of how the member states have come together and really started sharing the use of the term with the same kind of, let's get into it, let's do this. Over here in England and Wales, we've got the National Occupational Standards for Youth Work. I've put links on this, so I'm happy to share this, send the slides over to whoever, and you can send them out. But in 2019, they were reviewed because they did not have a inclusion of digital in them. So when we train youth workers here in Birmingham, we use the National Occupational Standards as almost like a key document to highlight really key areas of practice. And now we've got the document that includes the use of digital skill in our work. When we speak about young people exploring their identity, a big theory that comes up often is Erik Erikson and his developmental process. And a lot of research is reflecting on his words of identity crisis and identity loss with the overconsumption of media use in young people. Our blended approach, so even though we have returned to face-to-face teaching, Some students actually really like it when we can just do a recorded session on top of some of the stuff we've been delivering. And I think that's similar within practice. We see young people actually liking a bit of both. They like the physical space, but the blended approach where we can offer some digital work really works. One does not replace the other though, so it's not about tipping that balance. Our digital competencies in assessing, when assessing training youth workers, so I've just put here on the side, Bloom's taxonomy. It's not always been called Bloom's digital taxonomy, but I think, I think it's one to put in there. So when we're looking at our work with students, we're thinking about how we're creating, how we're evaluating, how we're analysing, how we're applying, understanding and remembering. So that's when I'm delivering my training with students, I have to think about how are they appreciating the learning space if I am bringing digital into that delivery. Open access, open source platforms. So one of the great things about digital is that we can share resources and put them into an open space to constantly keep the conversation going. And I'd really appreciated being in that space, being in this space now when teaching and learning students on this. So just to kind of start wrapping this up now, just thinking about that first question, what is digital, and coming back to your role here in any delivery, or even when you're talking to students, if you're, or researching students, if that's your role, consider your current toolkit. So what digital skills do you have, as opposed to going into what you don't have? Let's move away from the, I can't do this, whereas I can make a phone call, that's what I can do. Cross-sector support, so who else, you might not be the person that knows how to launch the Zoom, but who else in your sector or across sectors can be in that space with you. Now, what has been researched, something that comes up quite a lot is replica research bits on how young people use social media. Like, it's great to see the consumption of it and how maybe we can fit into that space, but do we need to do a whole new research project on it? I don't know, but it's just good to know what has been done. There's a lot of research out there in a minute around the impact of the pandemic. Co-create your strategy, speak to young people, have a look if you have any digital policies within your workplace as well. It's a really good place to start. And thinking about what are the needs as well. Can you help do some training with anybody? Do you know anybody else that could do some training? Just what are the specific needs? Again, going back to that toolkit. So that's me wrapped up. Questions, comments, very welcome. I just wanted to show this last slide before we do it. I've put some resources here which I found really useful in my time in practice. So when I share these slides with the panelists, I'm happy for them to share with you guys too. Okay, that's me done.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe, for that
No worries.
spirited presentation. At this point, we're going to open the floor for question and answer. So you can go ahead and type your question in the Q&A, and I'll just relay them to Chloe.
Will they appear in the chat box?
Yeah, in the Q&A. They're gonna. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see
All right.
the Q&A box.
So let me ask the first question. Oh, all your question there, they said. Let me ask the first question. Any thought on whether digital technology is disrupting the relationship, the digital technology among youth is disrupting family relationship? Digital technology among youth is disrupting family relationship because it's quite possible that instead of, you're in the same setting, for example, at home, but instead of communicating, verbally, people are in the kitchen, you're in the bedroom, and you're typing, at your smartphone, sending texts and so on. So I'm wondering whether, that sort of situation is driving a wedge between, family socialization, or family and the young ones socializing.
I think, you've definitely got a point. I think there is some divide between who uses it, when they use it, how much they use it. And I think, I don't know, myself, maybe yourself, we kind of know when we've had enough. We've got this thing where we're just like, oh, too much screen time. I'm over screens. I don't want to be on my phone, or I don't want to be on the computer. And I feel like because of the amount of digital technology that there is, young people don't know what that is, what the off switch is, because they come off their phone, and then what do? Oh, what should we do? Oh, do we want to watch Netflix? Okay, then they go back on a screen. And I think we have some work to do around talking to young people about that, what that off switch is. But also, I think also we have to be conscious, and I've fallen into this trap many times where I'm like, I don't want to use the screen or the phone. I just want to do something else. And then we've gone back on our phones to Google the rules of a game that we forgot. So it has its pros and cons, and I think we've got work to do. So I think there is disruption. We have to navigate that,
All right, go ahead now, Dr. Leslie. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Kevin. Very interesting presentation, Chloe. I was wondering, two things came to mind whilst you were presenting. I know the focus sometimes tends to be on users in terms of the young persons, but to what extent do you see that there is take up of the use of technology in, for example, social work? I know we had the workshop last week and a lot of emphasis was on social work, but to what extent do you find there's take up that, you really can, explore the innovations of within digital technology to carry out some of this work, especially in relation to case management? To what extent is there take up in, the UK? And my second question is, in your experience on the ground, or I see you touched on within a learning space, which most of the world is kind of embracing now because of the pandemic. To what extent do you see there being any correlation or relationship between ethnicity and class and the use of
So let's go with the first one first, about the link to social work. I suppose in England, social work does work slightly differently. You mentioned case management. So youth workers typically don't case manage young people here in the UK. We have a bit more of an open relationship, whereas social work has to have that close relationship because they are there more from a child protection dimension. And I think this is where I bring in the question, well, what is digital? What does that mean to you? Because I think, especially when the pandemic started, we had this big rush of reflection and suggestion of, oh, you have to use WhatsApp now and you have to communicate like this. And there was a lot of panic because we hadn't done enough research around, talking to young people via WhatsApp. Is it safe? We don't know. So, digging around WhatsApp's policies around how they share data was always really interesting. But we then just returned to like, okay, well, what do we mean when we're talking digital? We're just starting with the form, like the first thing that we need to get them to complete. How do we, instead of getting to the office and printing it all off and taking it with us, how can we just load that onto an iPad and take the iPad with us and make that. Young people on iPads, absolutely brilliant, so fast. So why don't we utilise that in the work? And those were more of the questions rather than the use of things like quizzes or Zoom to do your session. It was like, how else can we use digital here? And I think you'd be surprised in the amount of practice that still happens in like a pen to paper format. A lot of people like to work like that, but in terms of time and how to relate to a young person, we have to change that practice, I think, and include some of the other things. And then in terms of your second question around race and ethnicity, I think this is where young people create closed spaces that, when I was speaking about learning behaviour versus being nosy, we just have to ask questions and explore the digital space with them as opposed to for them or because we want to gain something from it. So I don't know what you guys had when the pandemic hit, but there was a lot of digital like device sharing products set up here. So people that had old laptops sitting around in their house, individuals from communities were coming forward saying, well, I can get that up to speed and we can hand these out to 5 young people and so on with mobile phones. I think, I can't remember which, Tesco, which is a big supermarket, and they released quite a bit of money to just get young people phones and more for social work reasons, actually. There wasn't anything fancy, but we had them in everyone's homes. But also, where's my point gone? It was on the social class thing. This thing around right to repair, I think, is really interesting. I don't know if you guys have heard about this movement, but there is a slow creeping movement around right to repair and devices, because a lot of young people we're seeing are swept up into the consumption of digital. So they'll have the next iPhone, they'll have a laptop way out of their affordability range. The companies are making a lot of money on them. That young person breaks a phone, it's highly likely they don't get another one because they can't afford to repair, or it's unrepairable because of the way that it's been made. So the right to repair thing is really interested in closing that divide, because they are campaigning, they are building a new community where actually they're saying, no, we're not buying the products, we're not doing that because we can't do our work whilst being alongside your money making thing. So yeah, so that's my reflection on that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. I see. Okay, sorry, Kevin.
You can see. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can see the comment and questions from
Audrey.
Yeah, from Audrey. Yeah. So Audrey says, can you speak about the accommodations of these policies and procedures for youth with disabilities? Also, did you notice any gender differentials in the use of digital technologies? Yes, so the disabilities one is really interesting. And when we look at the accessibility of practice, the delivery of practice, the accessibility of the platforms we use, there's a couple of key things that a lot of people are missing. So if we were using any images in work, whether that be through a presentation or we were sending people images, it's having an audio description of the images to make sure every young person could understand what it is that we were looking at. Using the transcripts, these are things that have come out of my practice in particular, using transcripts for any like online youth work session. So I don't know how it does with Zoom, but Microsoft Teams recently changed the way you set up a call, so you have to have the transcript on, you can't not have it. And it was very helpful to have that, because it was typing it out for us, as well as appearing on the screen on any recording that we did. So that they were two really quick, clear things that a lot of people are missing out of practice if they're using digital before. That came up when we were working with young people with disabilities. I suppose other things, like some of the disabilities we don't talk about when using digital, are things like attention hyperactivity deficit disorder. So trying to get a young person to stay on a call with you for an hour doesn't work. You've got to give that call like 5 to 10 minutes and just know that actually they just need space to if you're using a platform like Zoom, they want to press every button. But okay, let's try that. Let's just press every button, get that out of the way. It's more about being more fluid with that practice and not trying to stick to a plan and not being scared when it doesn't stick to the plan. I think that came up more when we're looking with young people without physical disabilities, more emotional learning disabilities. Notice any gender differentials in these digital technologies. I think there is research around female use increasing, but I do think that is because we don't look at them, we don't look enough at the male use, and maybe we don't ask males around their use of digital technology, particularly younger males. Something that came up in the summer school, and this was interesting, we were asking young people how to find an image on their phone that defined beauty. There's a group of lads, super clever, they were there for the week, they were great lads. And I said, oh, what are you guys picking then? And they were like, we don't know, we'll just pick what the girls pick, because beauty, like, we don't really use that word. And I was like, this is interesting. So I think when it comes to gender, we do have to explore, like, again, that space that we're in. Are we just going to the people that come to us because of how we're speaking to them, that language and behaviour towards them? So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. Question?
Yeah.
Is there any more question? Okay, there's a question coming in. Okay. That's thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. You have any more questions there? Anyone? Okay, so your responses were clear, presentation was clear. So maybe we can, at this point, put a wrap on it.
That sounds fine.
Yep.
Yep. I hope.
Maybe,
yeah, I was just going to say, I hope people manage to take something away from today. And I think whenever these things happen, it's really important just to remind people. Well, for me, it's not about telling people how to do it. It's just about opening up the questions on, like, how are we doing it, if we're doing it at all. So if anything, I hope people just take away some reflection around that use of digital in their practice, their teaching, or their researching.
Okay, thank you, Chloe.
Yeah.
So what's left for me is to say a big thank you for your presentation. And I enjoyed it. I learned the link between youth, and digital technology, and how it can be disruptive, as well as, it can be a useful tool, to move society forward in terms of productivity and so on. So thank you very much for that presentation, and we look forward to have you again. Okay, so let's, I give you a big thank you.
Thanks,
you. Chloe.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you for the opportunity to present. See you soon.
Okay, bye-bye, Chloe.